Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, I'm going to be discussing a subject that dates back all the way to the start of Dragon Ball Z. That would have to do with an iconic technique that Goku uses throughout the course of the Dragon Ball franchise, and that would be the Kaioken. And more specifically, why does the Kaioken hurt Goku's body when he uses it? Well, I'm going to be discussing that in depth in this video, but before I begin, if you're new here, consider subscribing and enabling notifications so you can stay up to date with all my future videos. Additionally, make sure to like this video, share it out, let me know your own thoughts down below, and let's get into the video. So I tend to like to go chronological order with this, so let's begin with the first example of us being introduced to the Kaioken. Goku was on King Kai's planet after his death at the hands of Piccolo, and I talked about who would actually win in a fight between him and Piccolo in the top right corner that you could see there, and also below the description where they usually hide those things. But during this training, after he had caught Bubbles, King Kai was impressed, and he said right here, he's even more amazing than I thought. He's already mastered the gravity here, hasn't he? And with 118 days remaining, he may be the one to master the Kaioken. And what does King Kai say here right now as well? He actually says, the Kaioken that I've yearned of, but have never been able to master myself. Now that's an interesting point. The guy who created the Kaioken, the guy who was the one who trained Goku to use it, named after himself, the Kaio, Fist of the Kai, the King of Worlds. The fact of the matter is that he himself can't even master and use this ability. However, Goku ends up being able to, as we see with the first example of him doing this, which is where he is in the midst of fighting against Nappa. However, he's losing here, Nappa that is, and so Vegeta tells him that he's going to deal with Kakarot himself. But because Nappa is somebody who doesn't really listen to orders that well, he decides to rush in to attack Gohan and Krillin. At this point, Goku realizes that he's at a disadvantage in terms of distance and speed here, and so he decides to rev his power up by using the Kaioken. Now, I talked about in depth in a video you can see in the top right corner exactly how the Kaioken works in terms of its multiplier, and what the multiplier for this Kaioken is that Goku's using right here. At this point, he breaks Nappa's back, and it doesn't actually hurt him by using it. However, Goku goes on to explain how this ability works, where Krillin says, Goku, how did you do that? Was that something you learned from that Kaio-sama guy? Goku says, yeah, it's called the Kaioken. By controlling all of the ki in your body, you can amplify it momentarily. If you do it right, your power, speed, and destructive and defensive force multiply several times over. And then Krillin says, that's awesome. So you're saying that as strong as you already are, you can multiply it at will. And Vegeta's getting annoyed because he can't hear what they're saying, but he also noted Goku's increase in power overall. And, you know, he's saying right here that Krillin says, if you had that up your sleeve, you should have used it from the start. Goku says, sorry, it doesn't work that way. If I don't control it just right when I'm throttling my energy, I could really mess myself up. And here we see a flashback to when he was learning about this technique. Basically, and then King Kai takes over. Just to re-emphasize, at this point, you can't rely on the Kaioken too heavily. If you slip up and lose control at any point, you can easily destroy your body. Don't go beyond a double Kaioken, understood? Performing a Kaioken beyond that will put too great of a strain on your body. It won't be able to keep up with the technique, and it will backfire on you. Goku says that he understands, and this is what leads into us seeing the effects of that during the fight between Goku and Vegeta, the iconic battle between these two that would be the first of many to come in different series. Now, during this fight, Goku is at a big disadvantage in terms of power. Vegeta, before he even went to full power, was still way above Goku's 8,000, and as a result, Goku needed to use his Kaioken in order to be able to do battle against him, using the regular Kaioken, doubling his power, and then in turn going to fight Vegeta right here. and, not actually being able to get the better of him because the fact that, again, Vegeta had a power level of 18,000, which is well above the power Goku would be able to put out here. And they even have a little explanation here. Not even doubling his strength through the Kaioken was enough to stop the Saiyan. So this is what eventually prompts Goku to have to turn it up a little bit more, where he goes after Vegeta powers up to full, as we could see right here, and decides to put his body on the line by going further than the ×2 that we could see right here, when he says that he's going to have to increase it to a ×3. Now notice at this point, King Kai immediately interjects and he's telling Goku, no, you can't go over the 2 times power, once again reiterating what he said before. But he also relents that, then again, it's true that the way that things are going, he doesn't stand a chance. And so he has to actually go to the ×3, which causes him to get the better of Vegeta here, dealing some serious damage, knocking Vegeta back, and shattering his pride, as I talked about in another video you could see in the top right corner, which you guys should definitely check out. However, after Goku does use that ability, you start to see that already is taking damage on him and taking a toll, where he's huffing and puffing, and we can see the after effects in this awesome cover that Toriyama drew, where he says right here, sure enough, it looks like using the triple Kaioken is too much for me. If this drags out for much longer, I'll be the one who's done in first. But Goku does in fact need to use it, and to an even higher degree after this, where he starts with a triple Kaioken Kamehameha against Vegeta's Gallic Gun. However, after Vegeta fires it and the two of them match up in terms of their powers, Goku has to exceed this even more by going to a ×4, at which point he's able to get the better of Vegeta, but you could just see immediately the detriment to Goku that was unleashed right here, the ultimate damage it started to do to him, especially when Yajirobe comes up here to congratulate him, where he just slaps him on the back kind of gently, at least for Yajirobe, and you could see that Goku is screaming in agony because he put too much strain on his body, which again is kind of a running theme and part of what I'm going to be getting into exactly why it does that in depth momentarily. But we see that as Goku continues on to increase his power, he's able to actually use even higher degrees of the Kaioken. Like right here, he uses the regular Kaioken against Captain Ginyu, which revs his power up from 90,000 to 180. And then he explains that he could do far more in short bursts. And we know that he could do far more because the fact that we actually do go on to see him do this when he's fighting against Frieza. Specifically, when Frieza decides to use his 50% power, which Goku at first thinks is probably a bluff, until right here he realizes straight away that it isn't, as Frieza starts to deal some serious damage to him, and even though he's still kind of toying with him in terms of his tactics, he is not really toying that much in terms of his power. Goku unleashes the Kaioken at this point, and he's still getting knocked back, because even his Kaioken ×10 here isn't capable of matching up to 50% Frieza, it would only match up to his 25%. During this point, Tien is actually saying, aren't you forgetting about the Kaioken technique? At this level of training, Goku should be able to multiply it by a factor of 10. And he does in fact do that, but at no point during this do we see that Goku is actually taking any damage to his body when he's using the technique. It's not exhausting him, it's not stressing him too much. But why exactly is that? Well, we actually get an explanation of this in the manga before this point, where Goku is training on his way to planet Namek. And as you could see, he's dealing some significant damage to himself, and he's getting Zenkai boost in the process, which it says right here. Over and over, Goku trains until he nears his own demise, then eats a sensu bean in order to restore his strength. The 7 sensu beans given him by Karan-sama are now down to only 3. Whether he realizes it or not, this kind of training greatly benefits him. As a Saiyan, Goku's strength increases each time he overcomes death. And so, afterward, when Goku shows, himself just how much of an increase he's gotten by lowering the gravity down to regular Earth gravity one more time, which, as we could see right here, he throws a stone and he's able to catch it. He's incredibly light and lightweight. And so at this point, what does he say right here? He says that, I bet I could even take a 10 times Kaioken. So Goku not only trained himself on his way to Namek in order to be able to do that, but additionally, he also got a massive Zenkai boost, which allowed him to even fight against Frieza in the first place. However, that does not necessarily mean that he was capable of taking it even higher than 10, because as we could see right here, Goku decides to rev it up to a times 20 because he doesn't see any other way for him to be able to defeat Frieza at this point otherwise. So he goes far beyond his limits, 2 times in fact, and he proceeds to unleash this, and he deals damage to Frieza, firing this epic Kamehameha, which I still don't understand why they did the coloration with yellow instead of blue in the manga, but that's a whole other side thing. And then we end up seeing he does not actually hurt Frieza at all, but he actually deals even more damage to himself at this point, because when he lowers to the ground, once again, we see that sign that is reminiscent of what we saw in the Saiyan Saga. He's huffing and puffing. He dealt some serious damage to himself to where he can't really even fight back against Frieza, which is what prompts him to use the Spirit Bomb, and then eventually it also prompts him to become a Super Saiyan, at which point he is seemingly restored to full power. Or is he? You could find out in another video in the top right corner. I got one more left this video, guys. I'm sure I'm going to use it. Now, with this being said, this is the last time that Goku uses the Kaioken in the manga. However, he does go on to use it in the filler after the Cell Saga, where he's fighting against Pikkon, and he uses the Super Kaioken. Whereas a Super Saiyan, he uses Kaioken on top of it to be able to deal damage to Pikkon, who is above Goku in terms of his overall power, knocking him into one of the rotating orbiting moons that is around the stadium, and then in turn gets knocked back down because he didn't really deal that much damage to Pikkon, leading to the climax where he used the Warp Kamehameha to give him a ring out, which of course already came after the fact that both of them got a ring out when they touched the ceiling. Now, Goku doesn't show any kind of negativity when he uses this, which I'll actually get into when we're talking about the next example of Goku being able to use this ability. It doesn't seem to hurt him at all, which you can attribute to him being in a dead spiritual body, kind of like how he didn't have all the same detriments when he was using Super Saiyan 3 and other forms in the afterlife, as we saw in the Buu Saga that would come after this. The next example of Goku using the Kaioken on top of another form is in the Dragon Ball Super anime, only in the anime of course, in which Goku is using it against Hit during the Universe 6 tournament, the Tournament of Destroyers. At this point, he revs it up to a times 10 Kaioken on top of his Super Saiyan Blue, which then leads to him being able to get the advantage over Hit, at least temporarily, and, you know, being able to even go through his time skip ability somehow by, I guess, increasing his power so much that he transcends the bounds of the 4th dimension that he was trapped within. However, after this point, Goku experiences something that he did not experience with the prior situations, or perhaps a far worse version of it, which is delayed onset ki disorder, which is something that harms his body, causes it to where he can't use his ki to its proper levels. And I guess you could say that maybe this is a far worse variation of anything that he had seen when he was in the Dragon Ball manga, or it could be just because it was a combination of him controlling his ki with the Super Saiyan Blue and then needing perfect ki control for the Kaioken on top of it, otherwise he would blow up. But again, what is all this blowing up here? What is all this damage that the Kaioken does? Well, I think it comes down to what King Kai said in the Dragon Ball manga. So let's get into that right now. So when Goku is talking to Krillin and explaining what the Kaioken is, he says by controlling all of the ki in your body, you can amplify it momentarily, which will increase all of your various attributes multiple times over, akin to whichever version of it you're using, the times 2, the times 3, the times 10, and so on. But with that being said, the fact of the matter is that there are different aspects of it that can go wrong. As he says, if I don't control it just right when I'm throttling my energy, I could really mess myself up. And King Kai says, if you slip up and lose control at any point, you can easily destroy your body. And performing a Kaioken beyond that will put 2 great of a strain on his body and backfire on him. The reason for this has to do with the same reason why when Goku is powering himself up over the course of the story, he's in turn able to use even higher degrees of the Kaioken, as we see with him using the Kaioken times 10 against Frieza, without actually dealing any damage to himself. Because the fact that Goku's body is not used to, it is not trained up to the degree to where it is able to actually utilize that amount of power. So when Goku is using the Kaioken, he is amplifying his power beyond the bounds that he would normally be able to. Typically, if you wanted to increase your power about 10 times, for example, you'd want to do something like train yourself, like increase the capability of your body and the amount of chi that you have within inside of it so that you're able to bring it out to that level naturally. Whereas if Goku had used the Kaioken times 10 on Earth, he would have been able to increase his power to 80 to 90,000, but on Namek, when he shows up after a Zenkai and after training with all the different Zenkais on his way to the plane and 100 times gravity, he can naturally output 90,000. However, his body is far more capable of doing that at that time than he would have been when he was on Earth, which is why if he used the times 10 there, he probably would have just blown himself up, because you're bringing out so much of your chi violently in a way to where it's an instant burst that if you repeatedly do that or you maintain that, as we see Goku kind of doing later on, it will start to deal more and more damage to you because you're going far beyond the normal capabilities of your body, your mind, and your spirit that would be able to sustain and withstand all of that damage that you're doing to yourself that you wouldn't be doing kind of like you're doing later on when Goku's using the times 10. It'd also be kind of akin to, let's say, for example, somebody trying to lift 10 times the amount of weight that they can on the bench press when they first start lifting weights compared to when they're 10 years down the line. If you can only bench 50 pounds and then you go to bench 500, or roughly 23 or 230 kilograms for all my international audiences out there, then it's probably going to fall on you and kill you. In the very same way that if Goku was to train under 100 times gravity from the start, it probably would have also killed him instead of starting in the times 10 and then going to the times 20 so that he could go up naturally. Same thing with the Kaioken. If Goku just used a Kaioken times 100 the second he was fighting Vegeta, he would explode and maybe take Vegeta with him. But you also have to factor in that Goku likely has a much greater volume of ki at the same time, which is another reason why Goku is able to continuously use it in the story. So as a result, I think that it makes sense in that regard. Like I said before with regard to the Super Kaioken, I think that Goku was able to use the Super Saiyan and the Kaioken on top of it because he was dead, whereas in the Dragon Ball Super anime and manga, they explain that if he were to have used it when he was alive, it would have killed him because of the imbalance when he is controlling his energy and his mind and everything when he's a Super Saiyan and then a Kaioken on top of it. Of course, that is a different continuity that came afterward, and of course, Goku using it right here, was filler, so Toei just has a different idea too, probably, than Toriyama about how a lot of these things work. I mean, after all, you could see when Pikkon showed up and Goku was going to go Super Saiyan to fight against the Ginyu Force, and they dyed his hair back to black, even though they kept the same aura color on him. And then Dragon Ball Super, they tell us that he has much greater ki control and is able to in turn use it. However, after the Tournament of Power, we don't really seem to see Goku having the same issue again when he's using his Super Saiyan Blue, unless maybe it happened recently in the manga. So the fact of the matter is that Goku only really had gone up to 2 times this and increased his power significantly greater since the Universe 6 tournament to the Tournament of Power, but it seems like the after effects and negativity of Kaioken right now isn't really as great as it was before, at least the way that Goku's been using it. And I think that a lot of that also ties into the reason why Goku stopped using Kaioken to begin with, because the fact of the matter is that it dealt too much damage to his body over time, in that it would have been much easier for him to use transformations, which also make his body go through a physical metamorphosis to be able to withstand the 50 times, the 100 times, the 400 times, or the thousands or more times that the new forms have, that it would be able to do without harming Goku's body, where he was not able to do that with Kaioken, which is a technique that does it in a totally different way. And so as a result, I think that's probably the reason why Goku stopped using it after his fight against Frieza on Namek, because he had Super Saiyan other forms that would be much better and far less risky way of him increasing his power, along with training his base form, that would make it to where Kaioken was something that he kind of did away with. And for anyone who's interested, I actually have a video that you could see in the top right corner where I broke down in depth how the Kaioken works. See, I told you I was going to use that last card. Make sure to check it out. But let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments, guys. What do you think about this subject? Also, if you're new here, consider subscribing and enabling notifications so you can stay up to date with all my future videos. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.